All right, how's it going, everybody? My name is Reclaim King on all social media platforms, and we are doing an ACFT seminar for the ReclaimedFit group on Facebook. So, however you're consuming this information, this content, it's going to be available via replay in the Facebook group. It'll be on YouTube as well as Apple Podcasts. Today's seminar is going to be primarily block of instruction. We'll be speaking through and things like that, and expect demos in the future. I know demonstrations of exercises and was definitely on a list of things. For those of you that may not know, I did a question in the private Facebook group asking what you guys wanted to see. So I took those topics and I went ahead and built something for today. It'll be roughly about 45 minutes of instruction, give or take a few minutes, and then we'll end with a live Q&A. As always, I have the stream to my right. I do it via Zoom, but I go ahead and stream it to Facebook live. So I have the Facebook live here. So if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll cover them before we get off. So hey, how's it going, everybody? Appreciate your time. As always, it's the one resource we don't get back. So I always want to take a moment and express my deepest gratitude for taking this opportunity on this Sunday to go over the ACFT. Moving on. So our outline for today. So we're going to do a brief introduction. We're going to cover what the ACFT is. We're going to cover event breakdowns. Then we're going to transition into hydration, nutrition, before, during, and after, something I think a lot of people miss. Some tricks and tips. As you can see, there says IE, go first, and then game plan. And then we're going to finish up with questions, any questions you do have. All right, here we go. All right, so what is the ACFT? Most of you in the group are in the military, but for those of you that may not know what the ACFT is, it is the Army Combat Fitness Test. It is a test that was developed by the United States Army in order to attempt to reduce the muscular skeletal injuries by our service members, as well as increase the physical fitness of our recruits. Regardless of your opinion of it, is it a perfect test or not? Guess what? The Army doesn't care. So it's the test we have, it's the test we're taking, and it's the one that we're going to prepare for. And hopefully you have a level of physical preparedness to where your training allows you to get the score you would like. But if you're specifically training for the ACFT, I think you kind of missed the point. The maximum score is 600 for the ACFT. The first test for record, so to speak, was October of 2022. Again, depending on your experience with the military, you were probably taking this anywhere as early as 2018, 2019, potentially, depending on where you were at or if your unit was testing any of it. Okay, and then the ACFT is intended to more closely mimic physical tasks and stresses associated with combat. Whether or not you're of a combat MOS, you still have things that you have to do as a soldier, skill level 1 task. And this test is going to be, a relatively solid test to measure things like power, speed, agility, balance, and muscular and aerobic endurance. So that, in a nutshell, is the ACFT. So we have event breakdowns. So there's 6 total events. We have the max repetition deadlift. So you'll execute a hex bar deadlift, trap bar deadlift, whichever you feel like calling it, for a maximum of 3 repetitions at a max weight that you set. Okay, so soldiers will pick a weight they can lift 3 times. If a soldier fails those 3 repetitions, they can go at a lighter weight. But you only have 2 attempts, and you want both attempts to be conducted in a safe manner, listening to all guidance by your grader. The standing power throw, all soldiers will receive a 10-pound ball, medicine ball, slam ball, and I typically say slam ball. It's the smaller ones, but you'll simply take said ball, throw it backwards and overhead as far as possible. Soldiers will have 2 attempts to throw the ball, scoring, and then the highest score that you receive is the max distance of a correctly performed throw within those 2 repetitions. All right, so then you'll be moving on to your hand release push-ups. Soldiers will be given 2 minutes to execute a hand release push-up. Essentially, you'll just do a regular old push-up. You'll go down to the ground. You'll put your arms out at full extension on each side. Then you'll return your arms back within shoulder width, and you'll press yourself back up to a plank position or forward front leaning rest position. And then whatever correct repetitions are executed within those 10 minutes will be your total score. The 4th event is everyone's personal favorite. It's the sprint drag carry. For the sprint drag carry, soldiers will begin in the prone position and they will sprint down 25 meters and back, and then they will secure a 90-pound sled, drag said sled same distance. They will perform laterals in one direction, whatever direction you were on, you stay facing that direction. You do the opposite direction on the way back. You'll secure 40 pounds of 40-pound kettlebells down and back as well, and then you'll secure Then you'll place the kettlebells down and you will sprint for the last iteration of the event. Again, pay attention to your graders, and we'll get into essentially like ways you can I don't want to say like war game each event, but essentially set yourself up for success for each event. For this event specifically, I noticed a lot of people don't resecure the weights on the sled. They don't position the handles where they want them. They don't even think to position the kettlebells where they want them. So they're doing a lot of back and forth and messing with the equipment when everything should be staged because you do have that time prior to executing the event. All right, then you move into the plank, which did replace the leg tuck. Again, if you have an opinion on the matter, Big Army doesn't care. But for the plank, you hold the max plank position before, and after that, you execute a 2 mile run, which is self-explanatory because it's been an event that the Army has had around for ever. All right, so I'm gonna go back. All right, we're gonna cover. So for the max the 3 rep max deadlift. All right, for an event like this is clearly a strength event, right? It's this thing is on the ground and we need to lift it above the ground. So what I would recommend for everybody to have in all of your training is to have some level of strength training throughout, right? Regardless of the block that you're in. Now, if you're in a speed and endurance block, you may not be your emphasis may not be strength movements. But in a in an ideal world, right? If you have a structured training plan, you are moving a percentage of your rep maxes. Some people like to do 1 rep maxes, some people like to do 3 to 5 rep maxes. And if you're in a hypertrophy phase, you can get as high as a 10 rep max movement of weight for the weight that you're doing. My personal recommendation is if you know, right, that the ACFT is coming up, then you know that you have a test, right? So, and you want to study for the test. So you probably know within a decent amount of time how far the ACFT is going to be. All right. Ideally, anything at or about 6 weeks is plenty of time to make improvement. And then again, they'll probably do another one within that same amount of time so that you can practice on some weaknesses and get better. Because there is one thing that I think a lot of people miss as well is there's certainly a skill component when it comes to these movements. One, I need to have the strength to be able to lift the weight 3 times, but I also need to have the skill to be able to do it. So if you typically straight bar deadlift, unless your straight bar deadlift for 3 repetition exceeds that of what you need on the trap bar, then I would recommend that you use the trap bar. Now, if you are like, I don't like it or this or whatever, then you're taking those thoughts, you're taking those notions into that ACFT test. Okay. So whether or not you like it, it's kind of irrelevant because it's the test that you have. So study for the test that you have. My recommendation be week 1, you can start as low as 70% of whatever your rep max is, or in this case, it could be a 3 rep max. So if I know my 1 rep max, and I'm starting out a training block, a strength training block, I would start at as low as 60 to 65%. And every week I would increase either sets, reps, and or the percentage that I'm lifting. An easy example, week 1, day 1, I'm deadlifting. If my 3 rep max is 340 pounds, I would lift 3 sets of anywhere from 4 to 6 repetitions at 65 to 70%. The next week, it would be a similar structure, but instead of 65 to 70%, it would be as anywhere from 70% to 75%. Somewhere in the middle is also perfectly fine. The following week, you guys get the point. I would increase anywhere from 2.5 to 5% per week as I continue to get stronger each week. Lowering the weight, especially in the beginning, is going to do a lot of things. I can actually focus on the reps and sets that I'm doing. I can get better actually at the skill of deadlifting, and I'm getting my hands on the piece of equipment. So I'm getting practice, I'm getting skill work, I'm getting speed work, I'm getting power work, I'm getting strength work. All right. Now, some of you may not know that, and that's perfectly fine. You can train the deadlift every day if you wanted to. Don't recommend it, but it certainly is possible. But you could do things like deficit deadlifts where you're pulling from a deficit, right? So you could stand on a plate, you could stand on some blocks, and you can make the deadlift a little trickier, forcing yourself to have proper technique during the movement. Another thing you could do block pulls. So I can elevate the trap bar and work on my sticking point. So some people have a problem with the lockout. I can elevate the trap bar again with bumper plates or blocks if they have them at your local gym, or even with the safety spotter arm. So I have safety spotter arms right here in the back, right? I could set that at an elevation so where I can work specifically on my lockout, right? That is also another thing you can do. And you can overload, right? So your central nervous system is only used to the things that we expose it to. So for the first time, if you've never deadlifted 300 pounds, the first time you touch it, your central nervous system is like, whoa, what is going on? You can prepare your body for that by doing overload training. And again, in regards to all this, not that it's a necessary disclaimer, but just in case, remain safe, know what you're doing. Everybody in the group has access to me and other individuals as well. You could reach out, shoot me a DM. If you have my number, give me a call or shoot me a text. So that's pretty much all I'm going to cover with the deadlift. There's many ways you could train it, but my recommendation would be, go for max, male or female, whatever the max is. Try your best to go for max. If you're not there yet, then that's perfectly fine. The idea is to exceed whatever you did last time, and you want to properly train for that. The last and final piece of advice I would give you is, and this applies for all events. I know the standards because they're already preset. I know the standards in which I'm going to get graded in. I know the standards, the weight that I'm going to choose for the events that I'm going to do, or the repetition time or distance. What I would say is you want to be able to move and train in a manner that would allow these movements and these events to basically be irrelevant, right? So personally, for me, my 3 rep max deadlift exceeds 340 pounds for a variety of reasons. One, I enjoy strength training. Two, I think it's absolutely necessary for longevity. And then the third, and when it comes to the ACFT, probably the most important for me, depending on the percentage that I have for the week, 340 for 3 might actually be a warm up leading to my heavy set. So if I can train, if I know the event that I'm going to be doing and when I'm going to be doing it and how I'm going to be graded, I can prepare myself ahead of time, right? So if let's say I have a 400-pound deadlift, 340 for 3 doesn't feel like 400, right? It feels easier. Okay. That being said, that means that if I train correctly, meaning I know the weight I want to hit, I know that that's not my absolute max. So I know I'm going to have energy left in the tank. I'm going to have plenty of gains left on the table. That means I can move to the next event, something like the standing power throw, with little worry and concern. But a lot of times, towards the end of this block of instruction, I'm going to cover something like mindset. And because if I'm worried about the deadlift and the deadlift doesn't go my way, there's a high likelihood that the rest of the events are not going to go my way as well. All right, for something like the standing power throw, that one is exactly in the name, and I think a lot of people miss this. Okay, so for the standing power throw, it is in fact a power movement. Okay, so um, I want to train it that way. Explosive power, right? Think jumping or even sprinting, right? So you secure the medicine ball, right? Or the slam ball, however you want to call it. And then all you're going to do is you're going to throw said ball overhead, right? So you want to be at full extension. A really easy and good example for that always is it's like a catapult, right? Think how the catapult launches, and when it's at full and prior to full extension, right? It releases whatever payload that it has and it has a follow through. All right. You're very similar. So what do I see whenever I see people do the standing power throw? I see the setup. They don't even have the same setup. I want to make all repetitions look the same. Consistency is key. So I already know where my feet are going to be. I know how I'm going to pick up the ball. I know how I'm going to stand. I know my finishing top end position because I've done it so often and so frequently that I'm not even thinking about the event that I'm doing, right? So if I have the consistency of practice and then I get my hands on the piece of equipment regularly, there's things that I'm just not worried and concerned. There's been times where I'm grading the event and people are asking me, "Hey, how do you do this?" So I'm like, "Wait, on test day, you're asking me how to do this or how to get better, right?" So and then of course they get a score that they specifically may not want, which is fine, right? You start somewhere, you are where you are, but I don't think test day is the exact day that you should be testing, like trying new things out, right? You already want to have been there. So everything is streamlined, right? This is the 3 rep max deadlift. I approach the bar the same way. I step inside the bar the same way. I secure the bar the same way. Same thing with the standing power throw. My approach to the ball is the same. Securing the ball is the same. My stance is the same. Launching the ball overhead is the same or near the same, right? And I know it may sound silly, set your phone up, get you a 10-pound medicine ball, or go to a gym that has one and film yourself, right? You can literally see where you're bleeding energy and being less effective and less efficient during the movement. It is a 10-pound ball. That is not, it's not a, that's nothing crazy, but for the distance that they want you to throw it, you probably need every ounce of efficiency that you can manage. All right. So, well, and something that something of which that looks like is, for example, at the top end position, you want by the time your biceps are in line with your ear, you certainly want to have the ball released. Or maybe you're a person that likes to jump during the movement. Maybe you're a person that doesn't like to jump during the movement. And these are things that I'll definitely cover moving forward on technique videos, and another seminar when I can set up. I have a DSLR that I'm gonna learn how to set up. If anybody in the group knows how to live stream with a DSLR, hit me up because I'm trying to figure it out to where I can set the camera up because I have the space here. I could do the ball throw in my driveway, and I could actually demonstrate and talk through. I have a wireless mic now. A lot of things are coming, guys. We've been working, and I can't wait to continue to provide a tremendous value to everybody in the group. But again, right, like, am I secure? Am I approaching the ball the same way? Is my stance the same? Am I throwing the ball the same? Do I have an idea of the distance that I'm already going to throw? Do I believe in myself? As crazy as it sounds, because belief is real, right? Do I believe in myself that I'm going to attain the distance that I have been training for? Chances are, if you haven't been training, you may not make improvements. If you haven't been practicing, you're not going to become more efficient. Excuse me, taking a little sip of water. And then, of course, when I don't get the grade that I wanted, I'm gonna pretend to be surprised, right? Everybody does that while they're attending these or while they're doing these events. So, next, right? So what do we have next? So, and excuse me. So, as far as the power throw, that pretty much wraps up that portion that I'm going to cover at the moment. But I will say it is a power movement, right? Easy ways to train, the same way I broke down the deadlift, right? It's called progressive overload. You start at a certain weight and progress it over time, right? I don't recommend throwing a 20-pound ball overhead. I've seen a lot of people do that. If you're going to do something like that, what I would recommend is overload training, right? So a 20-pound ball overhead for most people is manageable. I would go to full extension overhead and I would do a ball slam. I would slam the ball onto the ground because the full extension and driving through is like a reverse of the end position for the overhead ball throw. You can overload that way. Simple, easy workout would be, you know, 2 sets of 10 throws. So what you would do is you would again practice everything from securing the ball to stance to throw, do the explosive movement. Your rest would be simply walking over when your breath is back at baseline. Do everything exactly the same, secure the ball and throw it again. Don't do like 5 sets of 10 because it's a power movement. There's only so much of that energy in your system, and it's kind of like sprints. Everybody swears they can do 10 identical sprints. Realistically, you went way too fast in the first one, then you slowed down on all the other ones after the first one. Okay, moving on. And again, guys, if you have any questions, I have the chat pulled up. So go ahead and shoot them in there, and we'll definitely cover them at the end. All right, so moving on to something like the hand release push-up. So this one is a little tricky because for those of us that have been in the Army a little bit longer, we were doing the 2-minute push-up. And although similar, the hand release push-up takes into a major consideration, which would be the rear delts, which is going to be a giant weakness for a lot of people. Also, the way it targets the chest and triceps is a little different because you can't get away with as much as you could on the actual push-up itself, right? A lot of people can muscle through push-ups. It's a little trickier to do that on the hand release push-up. So for the hand release push-up, one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give is in the explanation and the standards for the hand release push-up, there's a very key piece of wording, and it's called grader's discretion. So, as I'm doing the hand release push-up, I'm paying attention to how the grader is grading me. Now, granted, in a perfect world, everybody's doing exactly the same, but we're humans, and that simply alone lets you know that it may not be done identical every single time. But grader's discretion, what do I mean? So, as I'm going out into full extension, the speed in which I'm allowed to do it is up to the grader to say whether or not I'm doing it too quickly or too slowly, right? So, for example, I don't have to go out like this because this is a lot of burnout. All right. So I can lower myself and go to what the grader's discretion as I'm listening to any warnings I may or may not receive during the movement, right? So that'll help you on the back end. On the front end, you don't want to treat it like a sprint, right? You want to have a consistent enough pace where you can move consistently for 2 minutes. Okay. Some of you may run out of time, some of you may not need all 2 minutes. Either way, to achieve a max score, I would recommend testing. And what does that look like? My advice for the hand release push-up is going to be very similar to that of the plank. You want to accumulate work over time. And what do I mean by that? So, way back in the day, not that long ago, when you had a soldier that would fail the 2 minute push-up on the APFT, so leaders would always be like, "Well, every time you see me, you're knocking out 25 push-ups." Was that the most effective thing in the world? No. Were they onto something? Absolutely. If I can break work up through time, right? I can accumulate more of it, right? If I can only do one pull up every time I get to a pull up bar, right? I can do one. But most people be like, oh, that day I only did one pull up. Chances are, if I go back within 30 minutes to an hour or even 10 minutes later, I could do another pull up. So, although my max rep is one pull up, if I take a break and I come back, I've done two pull ups. I've literally done 100% more than what I was able to do previously. All right. So, what does that mean for something like the hand release push up? Everybody has a cap, right? If you go out too hot out the gate, you're going to burn out. If you go too slow, you're going to run out of time or get disqualified, right? So, there's a variety of ways and a variety of things to take into consideration during these movements. Okay. Um, what I'm going to say is whatever your number is, right? Take your number, whatever your max number is, whatever your last ACFT was, or just in your living room at home, set a 2 minute timer and grade yourself. Right now, you're going to be bias grading yourself. So when you're done, maybe subtract anywhere from 3 to 5 repetitions because those last couple ones probably weren't as good as they should be. But you take that number, right? And then you use that as a baseline for how you're going to break up the work that you're going to do. Now, there's a variety of ways to do that. We're going to get into that. All right. So, one thing you can do is decide on a number in your head that you're going to do every day. So, from start to finish, you have 24 hours to execute X amount. I'll give you an example. I have a coaching group that I'm working with, and one of our tests for the month of February is to do 100 push-ups per day. Now, do I get down and do 100 at once? Nope. Sometimes I do a set of 50 and then two sets of 25. Sometimes I'll wake up and I'll knock out 25 to 50, and I just make sure throughout the day I finish the other 50, right? Whatever the number is, the number is always 100. So if I do 100 push-ups in the beginning of the day or at the end of the day or throughout the day, it's irrelevant because my body did 100 push-ups worth of work. So if I want to increase my hand release push-ups, I'm going to increase the frequency, so how often I do it, and the amount, the total intensity, the amount of which I'm going to do over time. So you take your baseline and you add two, right? So let's say my baseline is 50, all right? So I want to exceed 50 throughout the day. And it doesn't have to be every day of the week. You can easily do 3 to 4 times a week. Either way, if you're not training them, you're doing 100% more. And if you are training them, you found an easy way, low impact, low cost, super easy and simple to do that you can do more over time. All right. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to set that 2 minute timer and do sets of that throughout the day. So we used to call them pyramids way back in the day. You could still call them that, but essentially you do as many as you can in 2 minutes. Then you take that, you do a 1-to-1 ratio. So 2 minutes rest. Then you could do 130, 130 a rest. Then you do 1 minute, 1 minute a rest, 45 seconds or 30 seconds, equal rest, and then you finish. And you could do that 3 to 4 times a week. I like that one as well because it's similar to testing, meaning I'm running against the clock as opposed to just simply exceeding the number of repetitions per day. But again, either way, I took the amount of work I was doing and I increased it. Low cost, easy to do, frequency and intensity go up. All right, that's pretty much all I'm going to cover for the hand release push-up at the moment. Moving on to sprint drag carry. This one's interesting. Okay. Again, start to finish, we want to streamline the process. Guys, when I'm taking the ACFT, all right, I'm not thinking about everything or much of anything simply because I've done it so many times, right? I've practiced the event. Um, okay, so I'm gonna cover this one question right here. I appreciate you, Powell. I'm gonna keep providing as best value as I can to you guys. So Matthew Williams is asking you, do I add weight to my back? I have added weight to my back. It's a little tricky specifically with the hand release push-up. You can do something like body armor for sure or if you have something that stabilizes the weight on your back, you could change the position, the elevation of your feet. There's many ways in which you can make it more difficult. My concern though is as you're doing that, you can you can alter how you do the event. And I wouldn't want an athlete of mine to reaffirm bad motor habits and bad motor patterns throughout the movement. So something like going slower, like intentionally slower. So imagine doing 2 minutes, right? And every repetition of hand release push-ups would be a 2 second descent or 3 second descent. Now I'm doing something called time under tension. So with my own body weight, with zero equipment, have now made the movement more difficult. And I'm actually getting better form, right? I'm getting fewer repetitions, but the quality in which I'm moving is significantly increased. So I'm not going to say don't add weight. Um, you certainly can add weight. Would that be my number one go-to? Probably not. But you certainly can do it. Just make sure that the weight isn't going to cause you to build up bad habits that you therefore take into the event, and then you're just doing repetitions that don't count. All right. Again, guys, if you have any questions, like I said, I got the chat pulled up, so throw them in there, and we'll handle them as best as we can. Making good time as well. We got about 15 more minutes before we move into the live Q&A. Again, as always, I appreciate your time. And I know I talk a little fast, so I try to be conscious of that so that y'all can digest the information. All right, moving on to sprint track carry. So, all right, easy, right? If you think that you're pacing during the sprint track carry, you're already lost. Okay. Um, Yes. Yep. You could definitely add weight to the sled or kettlebells 100% because that actually would be significantly more beneficial to something like adding weight to the hand release push-up. Excellent point. But for the sprint drag carry, all right. So if you think that you're pacing during the sprint drag carry, you're doing it wrong from the beginning. Okay. So I'm gonna backtrack a little bit though. So everybody is gonna have a strength and or a weakness during this event. So setup. Please take the amount of time that you deem necessary for your setup. You're gonna have a few seconds as you transition in between people. For example, if I have somebody in front of me that finishes early, I'm immediately on the equipment, putting it where I want. When that sled comes back, when they're done with the sled, as long as they gotta go, I'm putting the sled back exactly where I want it. I'm rotating the handles, right? I kind of straighten out the handles and I rotate them back to me so that when I go to secure the handles, I can just simply grab and drag. All right. So there's my transitions are even exactly how I want them, right? So the way I do it, sleds on the left, kettlebells on the right. Kettlebells, they're not touching. They're not touching because I like to have space in between because when I secure the kettlebells, I step in between them, I secure them, and then I turn and go, right? And the reason why I can turn and go is because as I turn and lift the kettlebells, all that space is wide open. So if they're touching, right? If they're touching, I have to plant both feet close to each other, secure the kettlebells. Now my pivot is significantly different, right? Whereas I could just turn and drive off of the kettlebells. So setup. Make sure the weight's secure. Make sure the weight's on the sled. Make sure your kettlebells are right where you want them. All right. And even where I position. So if I have the kettlebells on my right and I have the sled on my left, the way I position myself, right, is in between both so that the equipment is untouched and unfazed as I make my first sprint. Okay. So for the sprint track carry itself, you just need to go, right? For smaller athletes, and at times it could be females or even males, when they secure the sled, they don't pull correctly, right? So you have to think when you hear me speak in efficiency. So if I have a deadlock arm, right, and a pull, I'm not using muscle to pull, right? My joint is at full extension. So I'm not flexing my bicep or my traps to pull. So I'm not getting any upper body muscular work, right? I'm literally using my lower body power movements to drag the sled. So that's one. So if you have a slight bend in your arms, the slight bend in my arm, energy can bleed out this way because it has to transfer, right? It has to transfer this curve. But if it's out, it's going straight back and forth. All right, that's how you got to look at it. That's one. All right, the next one is for whatever reason, and I don't know why, people drive off their tippy toes. All right. So if I'm dragging a sled that for me is heavy, now if you're a bigger athlete or a stronger athlete, you can get away with dragging on your toes. However, I challenge you because at some point those dogs are going to be barking. Meaning, if I'm pulling the sled on the tips of my toes, I'm engaging not only my calf muscles, but I'm also engaging my hamstring muscles, which are already being worked. But if instead of driving off of my tippy toes, right, I drive off the entire foot, so the toe can touch, but I drive off the heel of my foot, I've now taken that movement and I'm driving off the entirety of my leg. right? So I'm getting less muscle fatigue through time. I'm using my whole leg by simply driving off the heel. So yeah, the tippy toe touches, that's fine, right? The tips of my toes touch, but I drop that heel and I drive. I drive off the ground with my heel. So I'm using my entire lower body with every pull. So now I'm in a locked position. So my back is nice and stable. So that's not going anywhere. Then I'm driving off my heel. So I'm using the entirety of my leg. So I'm actually saving something like my calves and hamstrings, which I'm going to need because I just use my hamstrings on the sprint. Then I'm going to use my hamstrings on the pull. If I don't do the lateral correctly, I'm going to use a lot, even more hamstring, right? So, of course, that's why people stumble or some people even fall in the very last sprint at the end of the sprint track carry, or you get exhausted. So, my recommendation, smaller athletes or even bigger athletes to do it efficiently, that tips of the toe can touch. That's fine. Don't drive off your tippy toes. You're not going anywhere. You're also more so driving up than straight back, right? If I'm up, I'm driving up. So imagine if I'm driving up and I have a slight bit in my arms, I'm literally bleeding energy up and out as opposed to back. All right. So we do the sprint, just go. Drag, secure the sled, do it properly. Okay. Then we have to do the laterals, right? So then there or where recommended purchasing sled. All right, Stuart, I got you. I'll Stuart for purchasing a sled, shoot me a message to remind me, and I'll definitely hook it up. But Spud, you could literally purchase the exact sled that you use for the ACFT on spudinc.com. And if you're located in South Carolina, for my South Carolina friends in Columbia, he actually owns a gym in Columbia. It's an amazing facility to train at, and he has all that equipment right there. Soranik's website is another one if you wanted to buy the exact sled from the ACFT. Another one. Actually, I guess Stuart, just keep listening and you could check out these locations. And then howmuchyoubench.net has he essentially copies Spud's sled. It's an identical sled that you can it's a cloth sled that you can use on concrete or even turf or rubber. But yeah, so you could literally buy the exact sled that you test out with for I want to say like under $100 or at $100. And if you're in a military town, I would check Facebook Marketplace. People sell them all the time for 25 to $50. And if you find yourself getting a metal one, I would just because the metal one's going to move easier on grass, I would just overload it and you would get the same amount of work. Or pull it on pavement because then it'll be difficult. But then we're going to transition to something like the lateral. So with the lateral, right, what I like to do is I like to slightly rotate my outward foot. So if I'm going to the left, that left foot, instead of having both my feet pointed forward, I pivot my feet slightly. You go where your hips go. So I actually drive with my hips at an angle in the direction that I'm trying to go, and that propels me towards where I want to go, significantly more efficient than everything being pointed forward. Now it's a slight turn because you can receive a warning or a disqualification if I rotate too much. All right. That one's going to be hard to talk through. I'm actually going to have to demo that. Video coming soon. All right. Then the kettlebells. Now, again, recommendation, be at a complete lockout, right? I don't want it to be a muscle movement, right? I want to secure the kettlebells. I don't want to have my traps up because those are getting tired. I don't want to have a bend in my arms because my biceps are going to get tired, right? I'm going to focus on grip. You can get better at those by either securing heavier kettlebells and walking, or you can secure those same kettlebells and just walk for a greater distance or run for a greater distance, right? If you're going into the turn and you can safely do it, then use the weight. Kind of use the weight. Like I'll simply rotate the kettlebells slip a little bit in front of me, right? And that'll cause me to start turning, and I'm literally receiving help from gravity and the weight already in my hands to secure the turn. If you can't tell, I tend to think about some of these movements at great length. um, as far as hand placement, I like in the middle. That's my personal preference again because it's all streamlined, right? I'm at a dead hang. I'm streamlined. If I have it forward or back, I'm taking now an angle of a kettlebell, of a 40-pound kettlebell, which is not a light feat necessarily, and I'm either rotating it forward or back. I'm introducing additional resistance. If that's your thing, feel free to do it. You know yourself better than I do. And again, I place the kettlebells down, and for the final sprint, I'm not thinking, right? You don't like if you're finishing the sprint track carry and you can have a conversation or talk even just a little bit, you're not doing it right. It is a sprint. It is a full-blown sprint. And it's an anaerobic movement. Now I'm going to move into ways to train for it. Simple and easy ways to train for it. One I'm a huge fan of, right? So you could do 6120s or 3060s. That's fine. Go sprint. It's a lot of people don't like to run, and that's fine. You can do something like airdyne sprints, or you could do high speed movements on something like a Stairmaster. So you could put the Stairmaster at level 10, go for 20 or 30 seconds and lower it, then increase it to level 10 and then lower it, right? You can do Airdyne 10-second sprints, 30 seconds off for 10 rounds. What you're doing is you're shooting your heart rate at a high elevation similar to that of a sprint, and you're getting an equal amount of work or similar work as you would, obviously without weights, as something like the sprint track carry. Because I can take 10 sets, 10-second sprint, 30-second rest, 10 of those, right? Then I can make it 11 or 12, or take the 10 seconds and make it 12, make it 13, make it 14. And what you're doing is you're getting a similar response to your system as you do for the sprint track carry. Because a 90-pound sled, despite what some may believe, is not that heavy. A 50-meter sprint, 25 down, 25 back, is not that far. 40 pounds in each hand is not that heavy. But when I incorporate all of those things, and especially if I don't do proper technique, and especially if I don't have conditioning, then of course I'm not going to do it as well as I possibly could. All right. So something like hop on an Airdyne bike. You could even do it with a regular recumbent bike at your local gym. Increase it, like make it as if you're riding a bike up a hill. Do 10 to 20-second sprints with double the amount. So do a 1-to-2 rest, mm, work rest ratio. So a 1-to-2 or 1-to-3 work rest ratio for sets of 5, sets of 8, sets of 10, and you're going to increase the work capacity that you have over time. How often should you do this? Or when should you do this? I don't recommend you doing it previous to working out, because obviously you'll be tired from that to do your workout. You could certainly do it post workout. If you're doing like a lower body day, I may not specifically do it then. And also, how often can you do it? As often as you're recovering from, right? So if I can do it 2 to 3 times a week without it affecting my training, then I'm certainly going to do it. I could do it on a rest day as well, because it's low impact, right? It's all aerobic or anaerobic work, meaning it's all like my work capacity, and my heart is going to be the thing that should increase over time. Not that it gets easier, it's still difficult, right? Because how fast I push the Airdyne, or how hard I push the Airdyne is how hard it pushes myself. All right, moving on to the plank. This one's going to be simple. All right, just do the plank. This one's pretty simple. So the same way we talked about the hand release push up, and the same way we talked about the hand release push up, right? I want to accumulate work over time. I want to accumulate simple. It's simple. I want to accumulate work with the plank over time. All right. So what does that mean? If I can only do a minute, then I do a minute. Then I drop down. Then I do 45 seconds. Then I do 30 seconds. Shoot, if I can only get 10 seconds, then I'm doing repetitions of 10 seconds. Because if I rest long enough, I can continue to increase over time. All right. Uh, Kind of going back to the hand release push-up as well. It was asked if you could add weight. You certainly can. You could add weight with the plank. My concern, again, before we make it all fancy, is how can we get efficient and effective at the simple first? All right. So if you're not maxing the plank, I don't see why you would add weight. Right. Now, granted, you may disagree with me, and you're free to. This is America. So go ahead and do that. But again, can I do whatever time that I'm able to do for repetitions? So if I can only do 230, maybe if I wait 5 to 10 minutes, or even 3 to 5 minutes, can I do 2 minutes, or can I do 1 minute? And I can exceed my own personal record of 230 by adding the additional 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 60 seconds, right? And I'm tracking that, and I'm going to improve over time. You can literally do that every day should you see fit. It doesn't take that much time. Excuse me. It does not take that much time. So I could do it when I wake up. I can do it when I go to sleep. I could do it throughout the day. I could do it multiple times a day should I see fit. Again, requires zero equipment, only the space you need to be on the ground, and you can increase your effort over time and build not only the habit, not only the skill, but the strength and endurance to do the movement. Now, mind you, one thing I didn't cover is every time you get a new score at an event, it may in fact affect the next event. So if you've never deadlifted 340 before, the first time you deadlift 340, that's new to your body during this test. It may affect the ball throw. That's why my recommendation is always going to be exceed the standard. All right. If you can do more, then it's going to take less to do those events. All right. That's wrapping up the plank, the 2 mile run. All right. So what I like about the 2 mile run is nothing. What I like to do for the 2 mile run is, so what I'll actually do, because the sprint track care, so all the events leading up to that. So the deadlift, posterior chain, the ball throw, power and strength, moving into the hand release push up, more strength and endurance. And then something like the plank, right? Or even the sprint track carry, it's taken a decent amount of work, a decent amount of energy out of me. I will find myself a place to elevate my legs and allow that lactic acid to circulate down towards my hips and up towards my back. So I'll literally just, I'll find something, I'll lay flat on my back and I will elevate my legs and I'll allow all of what's going on in my lower body get down and out, and then I'll stand up and all of that circulation will go back down and hopefully clear it out for the 2 mile run so I don't have muscle spasms or cramps. Does everybody need to do that? No. I'm a little up there in age. It's also a trick that I find helpful. Also, that blood goes back to the heart. It puts you in a nice little meditative state. Your legs feel good. You can get a nice hamstring stretch as well. But that's a simple little tip that I can give you leading into the 2 mile run. And again, for the 2 mile run, whether it's down and back, whether it's laps on a track, you know, I don't want to say pace because the 2 miles is too short of a distance to pace, but I also don't want to say like sprint because 2 miles is too great of a distance to sprint. So you got to find a happy medium. Meaning you've already tested the event. You already know how you feel. You already know the time that you're shooting for. If you're running around a track, do splits, and that's too easy. You're either 5 or 10 seconds ahead or 5 or 10 seconds behind, and you're tracking that throughout the duration of the run. If it's down and back, have an idea of when you want to get there and when you want to get back. But if you think that you're just going to make it up on the back half after moving for around about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, you're tired. Okay. So with that being said, I promise you everyone can run faster than they think they can. Use the motivation of the people around you, the people yelling at you with the time clock and all that stuff like that. But most people, they quote unquote pace their 2 mile run and they just end up running slower. And most people cross the finish line. They're like, man, I could have ran faster because you thought about it wrong, right? Running. So let's say people run marathons or people run half marathons or people do Spartan races. All of what, like, my son can go do a color run and a 5K at a greater distance than we get tested as soldiers. Why am I pacing a 2 mile run as if it's a distance run? I can pace it, but it's a short distance run. It is not a long distance run, right? So I don't have to get comfortable necessarily. I can be uncomfortable for 2 miles because 2 miles is not that great of a distance. Most people and their mentality going into a 2 mile run is what keeps them from running slow. Obviously, there's a conditioning component. Obviously, some of the other events took it out of them as well. But if they're thinking, oh, I'm just going to go and pace myself as if this is a 5 mile or a 10 mile, like then, yes, of course, you're going to run significantly slower, finish the run, and be like, oh, man, I left so much on the table. All right. So we're going to transition now to hydration and nutrition. And then our final topic will be some tricks and tips. Now, I did hold you guys to, like I said, 45 minutes, and then we'll open up to a Q&A. I may exceed that just a bit, but I'll still give you that Q&A on the back end. All right, so for hydration, nutrition, before, during, and after, this is a massive, massive, massive piece many people miss. All right, so for nutrition, consistency. So as a coach, my recommendation to my athletes, whenever you're testing anything, you could be doing any event, triathlon, marathon, half marathon, 10K, 5K, whatever it is that you're doing, a powerlifting competition. I don't want to introduce any new foods into my system simply because I want to have my rest, my digestion, my elimination to be as consistent as humanly possible before, during, and after. So if you're 2 days out, 3 days out introducing brand new foods, like I wouldn't introduce any new brand new foods if I was a week out, 10 days out, right? And when I say new foods, I'm not saying like eat the same exact food, but if you eat rice and you eat potatoes and you eat some pasta and you eat some eggs and fish and chicken and ground beef or whatever, steak, have some consistencies in the foods that you're introducing to your system because your body knows what they are, right? Don't be that person that's during the ruck that's like, hey, do you want this thing that you don't normally eat during the ruck march? And then everybody goes, yeah, because they're hungry during a ruck march because they didn't have proper nutrition leading up to it. And then they eat this thing and then they have cramps and they don't feel good, right? You're doing that because your body is taking this Laffy Taffy or gummy bears during a stressful event and going, what is this, right? Now it may work out for you, and if it does, good for you. I don't recommend it. So, consistency. That being said, people are like, oh yeah, I had pasta last night to carb load. If you're trying to carb load a day out, you did it wrong. Also, like, do you normally eat pasta? Do you normally binge eat a bunch of food before an event? All right. Like, chances are you don't. So, like, why am I doing that to myself? I'm probably going to be lethargic when I wake up, a little tired. If I overeat, especially too close to bedtime, because it is a morning event, then I'm going to be tested on. I haven't fully digested. I haven't fully rested. I haven't fully recovered from the previous day's work or the training and things like that. So, have consistency in your foods. All right, hydration. So you notice the note says if you load, do it prior to the test. So some people believe in sodium loading. I have my sodium consistent throughout. I could be in a bulk, I could be in a cut. I may increase it during a training session if I sweat a lot, like if it's hot, like I'm in North Carolina. So in North Carolina summer here in the garage, if I sweat a ton, I might increase sodium just for that specific reason because I lost a lot during my training session. But my recommendation again is consistency. So I want to be hydrated not just the day of, I want to be hydrated several days before. Because if I'm not hydrated, if I'm dehydrated, I'm gonna be at a deficit throughout. So if my test is on Monday and I've been dehydrated since Thursday, I'm 4 days behind or 3 days behind, right? So I'm not gonna make up for it the day of. When people are sitting there drinking Pedialyte, it's too late. Like that Pedialyte is literally doing nothing. Not only that, when you drink something like a full calorie Gatorade or a Pedialyte, it is a 1-to-1 minimum ratio of Pedialyte and water or Gatorade and water. Like you need the water molecules to help move something like Pedialyte. Because if it's just straight Pedialyte, you're not even going to get the benefit of it. So you're spending $5 on Pedialyte for no reason, and that's if you find it cheap. All right, before keep it the same, right? If you know the day of the test, keep your nutrition nearly identical as best as you can, so your body knows the foods that it's eating, it knows the fuel that it's getting. All right, during intra workout, if you're the type of athlete that can consume something during the effort that you're putting out, I highly, highly recommend it. Because let's say the deadlift takes it out of you or the ball throw takes it out of you. For sure, the sprint check carry, most people's energy system is going to be taxed. So what do I like to do? All right, here's a couple of recommendations. Dextrose is a fast digesting carb. Right now, I'm not telling you to go out to Amazon and buy anything. There's no links in the description. I'm not trying to sell you anything. Dextrose is cost effective. You could buy it online. It is a quick digesting carb. So what it does is it'll go back into your system and you have fuel. That's an example. You can get it flavored, unflavored, doesn't really matter. If you could do something like orange juice may already be in your fridge. There's there's sugar and carbs in orange juice. Gatorade is very cost effective. Get you a regular Gatorade. That is another way. Salt tablets with some of these things, again, super cost effective, low cost table salt added, right? So like even my pre-workout, guys, I'll take a pre-workout drink, mix it up, I'll add some table salt to it, right? For I don't want to say free because I had to buy the salt at some point, and then I will have additional sodium during my event, but I know the amount that I like to take because I've tested it before. I'll have a drink, some type of carb-based drink, not food, because it doesn't digest quickly enough. So a liquid carb source is going to help me replenish that energy system that I just used. The syringe I carry is an anaerobic test. It's the only one during that, right? But it does tax my aerobic system enough to where it can potentially affect my 2 mile run. Not only that, it's going to take a lot out of me if all the events were difficult to me as an athlete. So your battery's getting drained slowly but surely or drastically, excuse me, throughout the test. So we want to give it quick digesting carbs so that you have readily available energy. I highly advocate though that you test what you're going to use. So if you're at your local gym hitting a normal training session, introduce liquid carbs in the form of Gatorade, Powerade, dextrose. You may see like bodybuilders on Instagram do like gummy bears. I mean, you could, but again, it's really easy to just walk around with a water bottle or a Gatorade bottle that's half water, half Gatorade, or a water bottle and a full Gatorade, and make sure you're drinking both, right? But what I'm saying is test it out. So during your squat session, get you a Gatorade, get you a Powerade, and bring maybe some orange juice, as crazy as it sounds. Things that are readily available, cost effective, and you can implement almost instantly. You can get near instant feedback on how well it affects your system, and you'll realize that you have more energy during something like the ACFT. And after, you want to recover like an athlete, right? Despite what you may think, you to a certain degree are an athlete. All right. With that being said, I want to move like one. I want to eat like one. I want to rest like one. I want to recover like one. So I'm thinking, okay, I just did this. What do I need? Okay, I probably need a a decent protein size meal, right, with some carbs and some a lower end of the fat. Just because I want to recover quickly. If I have a high fat meal, it digests significantly slower and I get bloated and I don't feel as good. But I want to make sure that I'm consuming the right amount of nutrients after that. I'm, potentially even stretching. I'm hydrated. Maybe you increase your hydration for that day for what you got going on so that you can recover and rest and train even later that day or the following day. But think of yourself as an athlete because that's what the Army's asking you to do. All right, so we got some tricks and tips. Now, I want to be again conscious of everybody's time, so I may actually have to cut this one a little bit short so that we can do the Q&A. But we're gonna go through this. Have a game plan. All right. Have a game plan. What does that mean? I want you to play the event through your head, right? If you're waking up a little earlier, could you try getting up at that time at some point previous to the test? Because if I'm used to getting up at 4, let's say I'm used to getting up at 5 or 5:30, and now I have to get up at 4, that can play a factor. If I'm eating before PT, is that too early to eat? What am I doing? How am I thinking about it? Are my clothes ready? Am I fueled? Am I hydrated? Am I rested? Things like that, right? I want to have a game plan. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to put the sled here. I'm going to put the kettlebells here. When it comes to the plank, this is how I want to always be set up. Hand release push-ups. This is how many I'm already planning on doing. And if I can break that record, that's super great, right? I'm thinking of everything prior to. So when it comes to the day of, I'm just executing. I'm not thinking. I'm literally just going, right? Mindset. You have to have the proper mindset and just pretty much every facet of life, but you're not going to do well if you don't think you're going to do well. And now, when I say mindset, you also need to approach your training differently. You need to approach the events differently. All right. So think about it this way. I know the events that I'm gonna get tested on, right? I most likely know when it's gonna happen, and I know how I'm gonna be graded during the event. That sounds like is as if a professor handed you the syllabus, right? And at the end of the course, you did zero work, zero preparation, and then you failed, and then you're confused why, right? It doesn't make any sense. You had all of the information given to you at the very beginning, right? So all you had to do is show up to class, do the work, right? All you have to do is go to the gym, hit your training sessions. You could even do plenty of things at home to get better. You don't need a lot of equipment. You don't need a lot of time. You just need to put in the work. Do your job and you'll get the outcome that you trained for or didn't train for. So your mindset needs to change. All right, I can't just go into the 2 mile run and lollygag, right? Like I have to understand that, hey, this is shorter than I think it is. I have to move faster. I'm not thinking about pacing during the sprint drag carry, right? I'm thinking about like this class this seminar that we're putting on, right? And again, technique videos are coming out. I'll demo what I was talking about when it comes to the sprint drag carry and things like that, so that you guys can, you know, I can better facilitate the scores that you would like to achieve, right? But it's mindset. You train, maybe you train, maybe you don't work, and it's not work out. I said, look at yourself as an athlete because you are, right? These are not these are low skill tasks that still require some level of skill and practice and the manner of which you can make improvements. All right, warm up for the deadlift. Those 10 minutes that they give you, warm up. Go to the lighter bar. Grab just the bar. Grab 135. Grab 225 or 185, whatever it is for you to warm up. Because if you're that guy or gal that just walks over to the 340 and pulls it and thinks that there's going to be a little consequence, you're lying to yourself. All right, so now I warmed up. I gotta stay warm because there is transitional periods between events, right? So I want to move. I don't necessarily want to statically stretch, but like you see me swaying while I'm even giving this course, right? I'm staying warm, I'm staying active. Those muscles that were once engaged need to remain engaged, or at least have the indicator to themselves knowing that they're going to be used. All right, that's part of that mindset as well. But I don't want to have to warm up, right? And I know that sounds crazy because we have to take this outdoors and some of us are taking it in the winter, so you actually stay cold, but that continuous movement, and you might look silly, you might look goofy, but it's way better to remain warm than have to warm up during the event. You're going to affect your performance over time. It's just a fact. All right, now here I'm about to give you all like one of the biggest pieces of advice, all right, that I can give you when it comes to the ACFT. And I'm going to break it down really quickly. Now, if for any reason any of you are ever taking ACFT with me, and I know some of you have, but if you're ever in the future taking one with me, you're not going to be able to beat me to this because I tried my very best to do this. Now, for the ACFT, go first. All right. For whatever reason, and they're not supposed to do it, sometimes the graders will let you test that on the lift during the 10-minute warm up. So if I go first, I not only have the 10-minute warm up to rest, I also have the 10-minute time period for everybody to test out. So now I have 20 minutes rest for the deadlift if I go first or towards the front. Then I get told where I'm going to go. All right. So then I get told where I'm going to go. If that's the case, I'm just sitting at my lane. So I know for a fact I can control the controllables, meaning for the next event, I'm first. And now you have timed events, but you have events that aren't timed. So if people take longer than they should, right, then I'm gonna get all that additional rest period and rest time, right? And some, especially for the plank, which they're working through right now. But if I went first, I have all of that recovery period because the sprint track carry, people do them at different times. Somebody could do it at 1:30, somebody could do it at 2:30. But either way, if I went first, I get 3 people's worth of recovery on the back end. So go first. All right. Now, play the game. And what do I mean by that? Just look at your graders, right? I'm not saying to not do the standard, but if your grader is is giving leeway, then simply pay attention to that. And if it's beneficial for you, do what you will. Now, I'm not saying cheat. I'm not saying do less than what you should, but I'm definitely advocating to pay attention to what you're doing and do the best with what you got. And then pace. Stop thinking you need to pace. You definitely don't need to pace. Um, these events aren't so insane that you need to go ahead and pace them. And as it like 2 mile run is short, the sprint track carry is not that long, so stop thinking you need to pace. All right, so those are my tricks and tips for this portion of what we're covering today. I'm gonna now move into the Q&A. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. Hey, Hickey, you're not late, man. It's all good. 1 second, bro. You good? Um, But yeah, so I'm gonna open it up for questions. Go ahead and let me know what you got. If you don't have questions, it's perfectly fine. I appreciate every single one of you for doing this with me on this Sunday. And it's been fun. I like doing these. Hopefully you like listening to these. And if there's anything you guys ever want to see, let me know and we'll make it happen. Like I said, this will be on replay during in the Facebook group. You can invite people. I think we're almost at 200 people. Let me look. Last I looked, it was 297. Y'all need to invite your friends and get us over 300. That's what we need. We need that. Let's get that done today. Yeah, 297. We have 297 people near 300, and we've only been live hardly 2 months. And that's a true testament to what y'all are doing. I'm not seeing any questions come in. That's perfectly fine. Oh, we got one. Hold on. Oh, okay, so how do I feel about where the ACFT has come from, where it started? Ooh, you're trying to trap me, aren't you? Um, okay, I'll say this. I think a lot of people misunderstood the APFT. Was it by any stretch the perfect test? No, but you have to think with the austere environments that the armed forces train in or even deploy to, what is a test that I could do with zero equipment? And I think the APFT kind of checked that block, but now we have the facilities and the ability like beaver fits and things that can ship with us to where now we can be tested with equipment. As far as it's starting, would I pick those 6 events? Not necessarily. I think a strength component is important. Like I think what they're testing is extremely, extremely important, right? Like strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Y'all have heard me hear that. There should always be a strength test. Power for sure, balance, and all these things that they're trying to test. Is it perfect? No. But to see where it's come from to where it is, I'd say I'm overall optimistic. As far as the grading criteria and things like that, I thought they overstretched by thinking they could have one standard. I'm 190 pounds. To think that somebody that's not my build, not my strength background, not my physical ability, yes, some that I developed and some that I have naturally is going to lift the same as me. I just think that's ridiculous in whatever category. Now, could anybody, deadlift what I can? Absolutely. Proper training, proper nutrition, proper rest, all these things. Anybody can do what I can do. I'm not special. Like I fully understand that. But to think whether it's a new trainee or an old grumpy star in first class, and just to think that they're all going to get the same score if you just make it one score, in my opinion, that was somebody making that decision that doesn't understand athletics, that doesn't understand training and nutrition. I think you need to have standards. Now, are the standards too low? I'm gonna lean towards yes, but that's just me. Um, but I think as far as the test being I think as far as the test being what it is for what it currently is, I think it's a movement in the right direction, and they have my full support. They've had it since the beginning, and I was very fortunate because I got to test it early on in Fort Benning, so I got to literally see it be built from the ground up. It's come a long way. Yeah, nothing's perfect, and would there be things that I would possibly change about it? Sure, but I think overall it's solid. As far as see the good idea to allow more people high scores, keep it original. I mean, yeah, I think they should make it harder. I don't think at the sake of sounding like a tool, I have basically only scored 600 since it's come out in all versions, all of them. And the lowest score I've gotten for something I'd never done before. And mind you guys, like this is at different body weights. I've gotten a 600 at 178 or 168 pounds body weight, right? So I'm still doing the 340 deadlift at 168 pounds body weight. And I was still maxing the run and getting 600 at 210 pounds body weight. So if you know what you're doing and you're training properly and you have a program to help facilitate it, you can achieve a 600. It's 1,000% doable. And I don't say those numbers and I don't pat myself on the back. I'm saying it so you guys understand that it is doable. And I'm 33 years old. So for the Army, that's pretty old. Um, and I was doing it when I wasn't 33, and I'm still doing it when I am 33. So yeah, I I'm not going to demonize it. It's a test that we have. I think it's a step in the right direction. Certainly, the standards could be different and make it a little bit more difficult for people to score what they're scoring. But overall, if you've been in the Army, 10 years or plus, you know that this is way better than what we had. All right, that's all I got for questions. If you're still here, I have something for you. So I have a see if I can pull it up. All right, no, actually, I'll put it up on the computer so y'all can see it on the screen so you know I ain't playing. All right, if you're still here, this is for you. All right. And if you're listening, this could potentially still be for you. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. You get to see my face in this beautiful squat rack setup, power rack, or whatever you want to call it. And then I am going to share this. So I have developed a training program, 6-week training program for those of you in this group that fall under this category. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, what are you even doing? All right. But special offer to you, the next 10 people that go to my last Instagram post, and I don't even know what it is, I could look it up, and leave a comment, I will email you this PDF of a 6-week training plan that covers all the events and 6 weeks worth of training 100% for free. Now, I'm not going to publish this in the community, but I will give it to the next 10 people that leave a comment on my last Instagram post. I think it was the one about the library, but let me double check. Give me 1 second. Yep. So this is my last post. Leave a comment on that post. I will reach out to you and I will send you my 6-week training program, the program that helped me get a 600, not these BS programs you see people trying to sell and things like that. This is tried and true. And if y'all know if you know anything about me or anything you've seen in the group, all right, it's all legit, right? Like I'm providing value because I want all of you to do well, right? But for you, the next 10 people that go to my last Instagram post, leave a comment and I will absolutely reach out to you and send you for free my 6-week training program for the ACFT. Has the events, has full-blown sets and reps, all that stuff like that you saw there. And I'm even thinking about developing an Excel spreadsheet for it, but I don't have that at the moment because Excel and I don't have a positive relationship yet. Every time I figure it out, she changes on me. All right, guys, I appreciate your time. We went 7 minutes over, right? So I did try to hold true to my time, right? We went 7 minutes over, but I appreciate every single one of you. Again, it's Sunday. You gave me your time. I'm incredibly honored. I'm very, very blessed. And if there's anything you want to see, use the group, right? I want y'all, writing things, sharing things, and posting things in the group. And that way we can motivate each other, keep each other accountable, and get to our goals. And remember, y'all, at the end of the day, it's your life, right? Reclaim it.